In the desert of southern Jordan, there's a narrow canyon. Walls tower 80 meters on either side. Sunlight barely reaches the floor. The path twists for over a kilometer through rose-red rock. Then the canyon opens, and there it is. The treasury, Al-Khazne, 40 meters tall, carved directly into the cliff face. Columns, pediments, statues, all cut from living rock, not assembled from blocks, not constructed piece by piece, subtracted, chiseled, revealed from the mountain itself. Welcome to Petra. The treasury is just the beginning. Beyond it lies an entire city carved from stone. Over 800 tombs, temples, a theater seating 8,500 people, royal palaces, markets, residential areas, all cut into canyon walls and cliff faces across a valley spanning several square kilometers. This wasn't a monument. This was a metropolis. The Nabataeans, an Arab trading people who emerged around the 4th century BC. They started as nomadic traders, middlemen on the incense routes between Arabia and the Mediterranean. Then they did something remarkable. They stopped wandering. They chose this canyon, this hidden, hostile, waterless place, and turned it into a capital, not by building on the landscape, by carving into it. The hidden approach. Petra's location wasn't an accident. The city is accessible only through the Sik, that narrow canyon entrance, for ancient travelers. Impossible to find without a guide, easy to defend with minimal forces, invisible from surrounding terrain. The Nabataeans didn't just build a city, they built a secret city, hidden in plain sight, protected by geography, revealed only to those who knew the way. The first impression. Imagine being an ancient trader. You've crossed hundreds of miles of desert, heat, thirst, danger. Your guide leads you into a narrow crack in the mountains. The walls close in, the path twists. You can barely see the sky. Then the canyon opens, and the treasury appears, glowing rose-red in the afternoon light. Columns carved from cliff, statues watching from niches. A building that looks like it grew from the mountain. You've never seen anything like it. You were never supposed to. This was Petra's power, the hidden marvel. The city that revealed itself only at the last moment. The engineering question. How do you carve a 40-meter facade from a cliff face? You can't start at the bottom and work up. The scaffolding would be impossible. You can't make mistakes. One wrong cut and the entire design is ruined. You can't add material back. What's removed is gone forever. The Nabataeans solved all of these problems. They carved from the top down. Suspended workers on ropes, cut platforms as they descended. Every measurement had to be perfect before the first chisel struck. Every proportion calculated, every column planned. This wasn't rough stonework. This was precision engineering executed on vertical cliff faces. The mystery. The Nabataeans left almost no written records we can read. We have inscriptions, dedications, names, but no architectural manuals. No engineering texts, no explanations. We see what they built. We don't know how they learned to build it. Where did this knowledge come from? How did a nomadic trading people develop the skills to carve cities from mountains? And why here, in one of the most hostile environments on Earth? Most buildings are constructed from the ground up. Foundation first, walls second. Roof last, Petra was built in reverse. The top-down method. Nabataean engineers started at the top of the cliff. Workers were lowered on ropes from above. They carved the uppermost elements first, the pediment, the decorative crown, the top of the columns. Then they cut a platform to stand on. Then carved the next section down. Then cut another platform, descending the cliff face, creating the facade as they went. By the time they reached the ground, the entire monument was complete. Why top-down? Bottom-up construction on a cliff face creates problems. Scaffolding against uncut rock is unstable. Debris falls on workers below. Measurements are harder to control from the bottom. Top-down solves everything. Workers carve their own platforms. Debris falls away from the work zone. Proportions are established at the top and maintained downward. It's counterintuitive, but it's brilliant. The zero tolerance problem. When you carve from solid rock, mistakes are permanent. If a column is cut too thin, ruined. If a statue is positioned wrong, ruined. If proportions are miscalculated, ruined. There's no patching, no adding material back, no second chances. Every cut had to be planned before execution. The Nabataeans must have had detailed plans, now lost, precise measurement systems, master craftsmen who trained for years, quality control at every stage. This wasn't artistic improvisation, this was industrial precision. The toolkit. Nabataean carvers worked with iron chisels, harder than the sandstone, wooden mallets, picks for rough shaping, finer tools for detail work, rope systems for access, scaffolding platforms cut into the rock itself. Simple tools, but used with extraordinary skill. The sandstone at Petra is relatively soft, easier to carve than granite or marble, but easier is relative. Carving a 40-meter façade still requires thousands of person-hours, coordination of dozens of workers, engineering knowledge to prevent collapse. The architectural styles. Petra's facades blend influences from across the ancient world. Greek columns, Corinthian and Doric styles, Egyptian elements, cavetto cornices, obelisks, Mesopotamian motifs, unique Nabataean innovations. This fusion reflects Petra's position at the crossroads of trade routes. The Nabataeans saw architecture from Egypt, Greece, Rome, Persia. They borrowed what they liked, adapted it to rock-cut construction, created something unique: the interior spaces. Behind the spectacular facades lie interior chambers. These weren't just decorative fronts, they were functional spaces. Tomb chambers for burial, triclinium halls for funeral feasts, storage rooms, possibly residential quarters in some cases, carving interiors required, removing massive volumes of rock, creating stable ceilings that wouldn't collapse, ventilation considerations, drainage to prevent water damage. The facade was the showpiece, but the interior engineering was equally sophisticated. The theater. Petra includes a rock-cut theater seating approximately 8,500 people, carved directly into the hillside, rows of seats ascending in perfect curves, acoustic properties suggesting understanding of sound engineering. This wasn't just tombs and temples. This was a functioning city with public entertainment. The labor force. Building Petra required massive labor investment. Estimates suggest hundreds of skilled carvers, thousands of support workers, decades of continuous construction. Where did the labor come from? The Nabataeans weren't a huge population. Their kingdom was never massive. Yet they built one of the most impressive cities in the ancient world. Trade wealth funded the construction. Skilled workers were likely imported or trained intensively. The entire economy oriented around creating this carved marvel. The unanswered questions. How did nomadic traders acquire this expertise? Did they learn from Egyptian rock-cut tombs, Greek architectural theory, Persian engineering? Or did they develop techniques independently? We don't know. The Nabataeans didn't leave technical manuals. We have only the results. The methods remain partially mysterious. Petra sits in one of the driest regions on Earth. Annual rainfall, approximately 150 millimeters or about 6 inches per year. Summer temperatures exceed 40 degrees Celsius. No rivers, no lakes, no reliable water sources. By all logic, a city shouldn't exist here. Yet, at its peak, Petra supported 20,000 to 30,000 people. How? The Nabataean water secret. The Nabataeans didn't find water at Petra. They engineered it. They built one of the most sophisticated water management systems in the ancient world. Channels carved into cliff faces, ceramic pipes running underground, dams to capture flash floods, cisterns to store water for dry months, settling pools to filter sediment, and distribution systems to deliver water throughout the city. Over 200 cisterns have been identified, some holding millions of liters. The Flash Flood Challenge. Petra's canyons are death traps during rain. When storms hit the surrounding mountains, water rushes down through the Sick and other canyons. Flash floods. Violent, sudden, deadly. The Nabataeans face this threat constantly. Their solution: turn the danger into a resource. The dam system. At the entrance to the Sick, the Nabataeans built a dam. When floods came, the dam diverted water away from the main canyon. The water was channeled into tunnels and channels carved into the rock. Instead of raging through the city, floodwater was captured and stored. The same phenomenon that killed 23 tourists in 1963 was harnessed by the Nabataeans 2,000 years ago. The channel networks. Channels were carved along the walls of the Sick and throughout the city. Some were covered with stone slabs to prevent evaporation. Some fed directly into cisterns. Some connected to ceramic pipe systems for pressurized distribution. The network extended for kilometers, capturing water from distant springs and seasonal streams. The cistern engineering Nabataean cisterns were carved into rock and lined with waterproof plaster. Strategic placement ensured water was available throughout the city. The system could survive extended droughts that would destroy lesser settlements. The Springs of Moses. The Nabataeans also captured water from natural springs. The Ain Musa fed water into Petra through sophisticated ceramic pipes. Roman engineers would later adopt similar techniques. The Nabataeans may have pioneered them. The agricultural system. Water wasn't just for drinking. The Nabataeans irrigated terraced gardens and orchards. Evidence suggests they grew grapes, olives, grains, vegetables, and fruits in the middle of a desert, using captured water and engineering genius. The comparison: Rome is famous for aqueducts, but Roman aqueducts brought water from wet regions to cities. The Nabataeans created water from almost nothing. They had to manufacture abundance from scarcity. The modern relevance. Today, water scarcity threatens cities worldwide. The Nabataean solution: capture everything, waste nothing, engineer abundance, is increasingly relevant. 2,000 years ago, they solved problems we're still struggling with. Their methods are being studied by modern engineers looking for sustainable water solutions. The lost knowledge. When Petra declined, the water system fell into disrepair. By medieval times, the engineering was forgotten. The knowledge that made Petra possible had vanished with the Nabataeans. Only archaeology has reconstructed what they achieved. The Nabataeans didn't have gold mines. They didn't have fertile river valleys. They didn't have massive armies conquering territory. They had something better: location. The crossroads of the ancient world. Petra sat at the intersection of trade routes connecting. Arabia, source of frankincense and myrrh. Egypt, gateway to Africa. The Mediterranean, Greece, Rome, the west. Mesopotamia and Persia, the east. India, via Arabian Sea routes. Every major trade corridor in the ancient Near East passed within reach of Petra. The Nabataeans didn't just participate in trade, they controlled it. The Incense Road. Frankincense and myrrh. Today, they're Christmas decorations, minor curiosities. In the ancient world, they were worth more than gold. Frankincense burned in every temple from Rome to Jerusalem. Religious ceremonies required it. Wealthy households perfumed their homes with it. Myrrh was used in medicine, perfume, and burial rituals. Egyptian mummies were preserved with it. Both came from trees growing only in southern Arabia and the Horn of Africa, and the only way to get them to Mediterranean markets was overland, through Nabataean territory. The taxation system. The Nabataeans didn't just let caravans pass through. They charged for safe passage, water access, lodging, storage, protection services, market access. Conservative estimates suggest they taxed goods at 25% of value, on products already worth fortunes. The wealth flowing into Petra was staggering. The caravan economy. A single incense caravan might include hundreds of camels, dozens of merchants, guards and guides, months of travel time. These caravans needed water, which the Nabataeans controlled, safe camping sites, which the Nabataeans provided, markets to sell goods, which Petra offered, protection from bandits, which Nabataean forces guaranteed. The Nabataeans made themselves indispensable. You couldn't cross the desert without them. Beyond incense, Petra's markets handled silk from China, spices from India, pearls from the Persian Gulf, copper from Cyprus, glass from Phoenicia, textiles from Egypt, slaves from various sources. Anything valuable that moved between east and west passed through Nabataean hands. The carved monuments of Petra weren't just engineering achievements. They were displays of wealth, the treasury, the royal tombs, the monastery. Each facade announced, "We are rich, we are powerful, we are permanent." Trade wealth funded the construction. Construction displayed the wealth. The display attracted more trade. A self-reinforcing cycle of prosperity. At its peak, 1st century BC to 1st century AD, Petra may have housed 20,000, 30,000 people. For comparison, ancient Athens at its peak, 30,000 to 40,000. Rome, 1 million, but Rome was exceptional. Most ancient cities, 5,000 and 15,000. Petra was a major urban center in the middle of a desert. Built on trade, Petra wasn't alone. The Nabataeans controlled Hegra, Madayan Saleh in Arabia, a second Petra, ports on the Red Sea, Oasis settlements along trade routes, outposts guarding caravan paths, a network of controlled points spanning thousands of kilometers, each point collecting taxes, each point funneling wealth back to Petra. Rome wanted that wealth. In 106 AD, Emperor Trajan annexed the Nabataean kingdom. Petra became part of the Roman Empire. But here's what's interesting. The Romans didn't destroy Petra. They integrated it. They recognized the value. They maintained the trade systems. They even added their own construction. Petra continued to prosper under Roman rule for a while. The real decline came later, and from a different source. The wealth paradox. The Nabataeans proved something important. You don't need natural resources to be wealthy. You need position control, infrastructure.services. They turned empty desert into the richest trade hub in the ancient world. Through engineering, through strategy, through making themselves essential. Their wealth wasn't extracted from the ground. It was extracted from everyone who needed to cross their territory. For 400 years, Petra thrived. Caravans arrived. Wealth accumulated. Monuments multiplied. Then, gradually, the city emptied. By 700 AD, Petra was largely abandoned. By 1200 AD, it was forgotten by the outside world. What happened? The trade route shift. Petra's wealth depended on one thing. Caravans needed to pass through. But trade routes aren't permanent. In the 1st–2nd centuries AD, maritime trade expanded. Ships could carry goods from India and Arabia directly to Egyptian ports on the Red Sea. From there, goods traveled up the Nile to Alexandria and the Mediterranean. This sea route was faster, cheaper, less dependent on desert logistics. Suddenly, caravans weren't the only option. Petra's monopoly cracked. The Roman reorganization. When Rome annexed Nabataea in 106 AD, they reorganized the region. New administrative centers emerged. Bosra became the provincial capital. Palmyra grew as an alternative trade hub. Coastal cities gained importance. Petra remained significant. But it was no longer the center. Investment shifted, attention shifted, power shifted. The earthquake. Factor Petra. Petra sits in an active seismic zone. Major earthquakes struck. 363 AD. Severe damage to many structures. 551 AD. Additional destruction. Each earthquake. Collapsed buildings, damaged the water system, disrupted infrastructure. The Nabataeans had built the water system, but by 363 AD, the Nabataeans as a distinct culture were gone. The Romans and Byzantines who followed didn't fully understand the engineering. When channels broke, they weren't always repaired properly. When cisterns cracked, storage capacity declined. The water system, Petra's lifeline, slowly failed. The population drain. As trade declined and infrastructure failed, people left. Not suddenly, gradually, merchants relocated to more active trade centers. Skilled workers followed the money. Farmers couldn't survive as irrigation systems degraded, each generation smaller than the last. By the 6th to 7th centuries, Petra was a shadow of its former self. The Byzantine transition. Petra didn't disappear instantly. During the Byzantine period, 4th to 7th centuries, it remained occupied. Christians built churches, modified tombs, adapted Nabataean structures, but the scale was diminished. The population was a fraction of the peak. The monumental construction stopped, maintenance barely continued. Petra was surviving, not thriving. The Islamic conquest. In the 7th century, Islamic armies swept through the region. Petra wasn't destroyed, it was already largely empty. The new rulers had no particular interest in a declining desert city. Trade had shifted to other routes. Other cities served as centers. Petra simply became irrelevant. The Crusader. Footnote. During the Crusades, 12th century, a small fortress was built at Petra. It was abandoned within decades. By this point, Petra was so obscure that Crusader records barely mention it. A city that once rivaled Alexandria was now a military footnote. The final forgetting. After the Crusaders left, Petra passed out of Western memory entirely. Local Bedouin tribes knew the site. They used caves for shelter, grazed animals in the valleys. But they didn't know its history, didn't know its name, didn't know what it had been. For 500 years, Petra existed in a strange limbo. Physically present, historically forgotten, known only to a few nomadic families, the richest city in the ancient world had become a secret known only to shepherds. The lesson. Petra's decline teaches something important. No advantage is permanent. The Nabataeans built their empire on geographic control of trade routes. When technology changed, maritime shipping, that advantage evaporated. When political power shifted, Roman reorganization, their centrality declined. When infrastructure failed, earthquakes plus knowledge loss, their survival system collapsed. They couldn't adapt fast enough, or perhaps couldn't adapt at all. The same desert that protected them became a prison when trade went elsewhere. For 500 years, Petra was a rumor. Medieval maps didn't show it. Travelers didn't describe it. Scholars didn't study it. It existed only in vague biblical references, maybe, fragments of ancient texts, Bedouin memory. Then, in 1812, a Swiss explorer changed everything. Johann Ludwig Burckhardt. Burckhardt was an unusual character. Swiss-born, educated in Germany and England. Funded by a British exploration society. His mission, find the source of the Niger River in Africa. To prepare, he spent years in the Middle East, learning Arabic, studying Islam, living as Sheikh Ibrahim. His disguise was so convincing that most people believed he was a Muslim scholar. The dangerous journey. By 1812, Burckhardt was traveling through Ottoman-controlled Jordan. He heard local Bedouins mention a hidden valley with ancient ruins. They called it Wadi Musa, Valley of Moses, but they didn't allow outsiders to visit. The valley was sacred, protected. Secret, Burckhardt needed a cover story. The sacrifice trick. Burckhardt announced he had made a vow to sacrifice a goat at the tomb of Aaron, Moses' brother, located on a mountain near the ruins. This was a legitimate religious pilgrimage. The Bedouins couldn't refuse. They agreed to guide him, through the sick, past the ruins to the mountain. It was a thin excuse, but it worked. The revelation. On August 1812, Burckhardt entered the Sick. He walked the narrow canyon, walls towering above him. Then the canyon opened. The treasury appeared. Burckhardt couldn't stop to study it. His guides were watching, suspicious. He could only observe as they passed. Note what he saw. Suppress his excitement. He wrote later, "It appears very probable that the ruins are those of the ancient Petra." It understatement of the century. The publication. Burckhardt died in 1817 before publishing his findings. His journals were published posthumously in 1822. The scholarly world was electrified. Petra, the lost Nabataean capital mentioned in ancient texts, had been found. The Expedition Era. After Burckhardt's revelation, expeditions followed. 1818. British naval officers visited. 1828. French explorers documented the site. 1830s, 1840s, artists created detailed drawings. The artistic impact. David Roberts, a Scottish painter, visited in 1839. His romanticized images of Petra became famous across Europe. The rose-red city, mysterious, exotic, lost and found. Serious archaeology began in the early 20th century. Excavations revealed the full extent of the water system, the theater and public spaces, the residential and commercial districts, the religious practices and burial customs each dig added to understanding, but also raised questions. So much remained unexplored. So much remained unknown. In 1985, Petra was designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In 2007, it was named one of the new 7 wonders of the world. Today, nearly 1 million tourists visit annually. The city that was forgotten for 500 years is now one of Earth's most famous archaeological sites. Despite 200 years of study, much remains unknown. Only an estimated 15% of Petra has been excavated. The full extent of the water system is still being mapped. Many tombs have never been opened. The Nabataean language is only partially understood. No comprehensive architectural archive exists. We've rediscovered Petra, but we haven't fully understood it. The Nabataeans built Petra to be hidden. Its canyon location, its secret approaches, its defensive geography. They succeeded too well. When their civilization declined, Petra was so hidden that the world forgot it existed. The same features that protected it from armies made it invisible to history. Only the persistence of one disguised Swiss explorer brought it back. One final detail. The Bedouins always knew Petra was there. For 500 years they sheltered in its caves, watered animals at its cisterns, told stories about the Rose City. They just didn't tell outsiders. When Burckhardt arrived, they weren't revealing a secret. They were finally allowing the outside world back in. Stand in front of the treasury, 40 meters tall, perfect proportions, columns carved with precision, statues in niches, decorative elements symmetrical and balanced. The question becomes, how? The Nabataeans had no written architectural treatises, no manuals passed down, no schools of engineering we know of. Yet they created this, the knowledge sources. The Nabataeans were merchants, travelers, people who crossed the ancient world. They encountered Egyptian rock-cut tombs, Valley of the Kings, Greek temples and proportional systems, Mesopotamian palace architecture, Persian engineering they saw. They learned. They adapted. But seeing and knowing are different things. You can see a magnificent building. Understanding how to build one like it requires different knowledge. The proportional systems. Petra's monuments follow mathematical principles. Column heights relate to their diameters by consistent ratios. Façade widths correspond to heights by geometric formulas. Pediments follow specific angle measurements. This suggests understanding of geometric principles, measurement systems, mathematical training. How did a nomadic trading people acquire this knowledge? The top-down carving technique. The method of carving from the top down was revolutionary. We don't know if the Nabataeans invented it or adapted it from Egyptian or other sources, but mastering it required understanding rock mechanics, knowing how to create stable work platforms, predicting how rock would fracture and split, compensating for natural variations in stone density. This is engineering knowledge, not intuition. The Nabataean hydraulic system shows sophisticated understanding, gravity-fed flow calculations, pressure management for uphill pipes, sediment settling physics, seasonal water harvesting, waterproofing techniques. Romans would later develop similar systems, but the Nabataeans did it first. With less technology, where did they learn this? Petra sits in an earthquake zone. The Nabataeans built structures that survived significant seismic events. They didn't build rigid, brittle monuments that crack easily. They built with flexibility, using wooden beams that absorb shock, leaving slight gaps between structures for movement, creating interior spaces that distribute stress. This suggests understanding of how earthquakes affect buildings, differential movement and structural response. Materials science. Did they learn through trial and error? Through observation of failures and successes? Or did they possess knowledge we don't fully understand? Nabataean tools were relatively simple: iron chisels, copper implements, stone hammers, wooden levers. Yet the precision achieved is remarkable. This implies organized training systems, master-apprentice relationships, accumulated expertise. We have Petra. We don't have the knowledge that built it. No architectural drawings survive, or none have been found. No engineering texts explain the methods. No training manuals describe the techniques. The knowledge was transmitted orally, learned through practice, held by individual craftsmen, lost when the civilization declined. We're reverse engineering Nabataean engineering from their results. We don't know their process. Some Petra monuments show apparent mistakes, façades that aren't perfectly symmetrical, columns with subtle irregularities, carvings that suggest rework, evidence that carvers sometimes miscalculated, adjusted, corrected, evidence that the perfect results we see were achieved through trial and refinement, not through magical knowledge, but through hard work and problem solving. The Nabataeans created something that didn't copy any single influence. It synthesized all influences, created something new. Despite all our archaeology, all our study, we don't fully understand how they planned the monuments, how they trained the workers, how they solved specific technical problems, how they coordinated such complex construction. We see the result. The method remains partly hidden. Petra rose from nothing, a hidden valley, no natural resources, hostile climate, difficult geography. The Nabataeans made it into the richest city in the ancient world. For 400 years, then it vanished. Not because the city was destroyed, not because the people were conquered and killed, but because the systems that sustained it became irrelevant. The fragility of advantage. The Nabataeans had one advantage: location on trade routes. They built everything on that advantage. When trade routes changed, maritime shipping bypassed the desert, new cities offered better logistics, political reorganization shifted centers of power. Suddenly, the advantage evaporated. The Nabataeans couldn't manufacture incense, couldn't produce luxury goods, had no natural resources. They had only position, and position is only valuable if people need it. The infrastructure trap. Petra's monuments are magnificent, but they're also expensive. Maintaining them, repairing them, defending them. As trade declined, the economic base shrank. The monuments that once announced power became liabilities. You can't abandon a carved city and rebuild elsewhere. The investment is permanent. The Nabataeans were trapped by their own ambition, the knowledge loss. When the Nabataean civilization declined, the knowledge wasn't written down. The water system, the carving techniques, the architectural principles, all held in the minds of masters who died without teaching successors. When Petra was abandoned, the knowledge departed with the people. Centuries later, when the site was rediscovered, we had magnificent ruins and no instruction manual. Petra was designed to be hidden, protected, secret. The geography kept it safe from armies, but also kept it isolated. When the civilization declined, that isolation became fatal. A city on a major trade route could have survived through merchants and contact. A city hidden in a canyon? Once abandoned, it became invisible. The same features that protected it erased it. The Nabataeans carved their power into stone. The treasury announced wealth. The monastery broadcast permanence. The royal tombs proclaimed dynasty. But monuments are fragile. Earthquakes crack them. Floods damage them. Abandonment lets them rot. The symbols of power became symbols of failure. A visitor to Petra sees beauty and marvel. But the monuments also ask, where are they now? Petra was lost for 500 years, but it didn't go anywhere. It sat there the entire time, visible to anyone who could find it. The loss was in memory, in connection, in understanding. We don't lose cities. We lose the knowledge of what they were. Petra still existed, but its story was gone. We're building something similar, digital monuments. Virtual infrastructure. Interconnected systems. We believe they're permanent, indexed. Searchable, safe. But they depend on continuous power, maintained institutions, shared protocols, institutional memory. If the systems that sustain them collapse, the monuments become inaccessible. Not destroyed, just unreadable. Future archaeologists might find our servers, but they won't know how to interpret them. We're creating our own linear A. Petra wasn't a failure. It was a success that couldn't sustain itself. The Nabataeans achieved something remarkable. Built a city in impossible conditions. Ruled the ancient world through trade. Created monuments of unmatched beauty. Engineered solutions to environmental problems. They succeeded brilliantly. Then their success became irrelevant. Through no fault of their own. Through changing circumstances. What are we building that will outlast its usefulness? What advantages do we believe are permanent when they're actually temporary? What systems are we dependent on that could vanish if conditions change? Petra teaches. Power is fragile. Advantage is temporary. Knowledge dies with people if not properly transmitted. Monuments don't guarantee immortality. The Nabataeans built something that lasted 2,000 years. That's remarkable, but it also reminds us, everything ends. The question isn't whether it will end. The question is, what will we leave behind to explain why?